You know the stories. Rome, unstoppable empire, crushing everything in its path. Disciplined legions marching in perfect formation, victory after victory. But on August 2nd, 216 BC, one man turned 80,000 Romans into a slaughter pen, not with more soldiers, not with better weapons, with pure tactical brilliance that commanders still study 22 centuries later. Who was he? How did he do it? And why did 70,000 men die in a single afternoon on a dusty plain in southern Italy? Their allies were questioning whether Rome could actually protect them. So Rome did what Rome always did when backed into a corner. They raised the biggest army in their history, 86,000 infantry and cavalry, 8 full legions. The Senate stripped farms and cities bare. Half these soldiers had never seen combat. Didn't matter. Rome believed in one thing: weight of numbers, crush the enemy with mass and momentum, march forward. Never stop, never retreat. That's how Rome fought for centuries. That's how Rome won. Varro wanted battle immediately. One careful, one reckless. Hannibal saw that split and exploited it like a surgeon finding a weak artery. And interviews with survivors. And from scholarly analysis published in the History Herald in June 2020, examining casualty figures through modern demographic analysis. Now back to the information. Lose Cannae, lose food production across southern Italy. Rome's allies would see weakness. Rome couldn't ignore it. Hannibal knew they'd come. He wanted them to come. He picked terrain like a chess master. Flat plain near the river, room for cavalry to maneuver. Wind from the south, the Libecchio, blowing dust straight into Roman faces. Hot August sun. No shade. No water except the river he controlled. Every environmental factor calculated. The Roman army marched south from their camps. Varro commanded that day, August 2nd. Paulus advised caution, wait for better conditions, but Varro overruled him. They deployed on the south bank of the Aufidus. 70,000 heavy infantry packed in the center, formation deeper than usual, shoulders touching, shields overlapping. The plan: punch straight through Hannibal's line with pure mass. 1,600 Roman cavalry on the right wing commanded by Paulus. 4,800 allied cavalry on the left. 6,000 horsemen total against Hannibal's 10,000. Rome knew their cavalry was weaker, didn't care. Infantry would win this. Infantry always won. His army looked like a United Nations. 8,000 Libyan heavy infantry wearing captured Roman armor from Trasimene, 5,500 Gaetulians, 16,000 Gauls, mostly Boii and Insubres warriors, half-naked, fighting with long slashing swords, 8,000 Iberians in white tunics with purple trim, carrying falcata swords and long shields, 4,000 Numidian cavalry, light skirmishers with javelins, 2,000 Iberian heavy cavalry, 4,000 Gallic cavalry, 450 Libyan Phoenician cavalry, 1 to 2,000 Balearic slingers, famous for accuracy at 200 meters. Every unit specialized, every unit positioned where their strengths mattered most. Polybius described their appearance as strange and terrifying. Naked Celts next to Iberians in linen tunics, Gauls with oval shields and long swords that could only slash, Iberians with round Ketras shields and falcatas that could cut and thrust. This center wasn't meant to hold, it was meant to bend. Hannibal himself stood at the front with his brother Mago, leading from the weakest point because he needed them to fight hard while retreating, slowly. Iberian and Gallic heavy cavalry on the left against the smaller Roman citizen cavalry under Paulus, Balearic slingers and javelinmen scattered as skirmishers, every piece positioned for the trap. Hasdrubal commanded Hannibal's heavy cavalry, roughly 6,000 Spanish and Gallic riders against 1,600 Roman citizen cavalry. Numbers weren't close. The Spanish and Gauls charged, fought dismounted in close quarters because the space between the river and infantry lines was too narrow for proper cavalry tactics. Polybius says it became a brawl. Men dragged from horses, stabbed on the ground. The Roman cavalry under Paulus broke almost immediately, fled. Hasdrubal's cavalry pursued briefly, cut down stragglers, then wheeled around behind the entire Roman army. Discipline, coordination, training. Not a wild chase, a controlled maneuver. The center held briefly, then began giving ground, slowly, step by step. The crescent that bulged toward Romans started bending backward, becoming a crescent curving away from them. Romans saw it as success. They were winning. Push harder, commit more troops. The entire Roman mass surged forward into the pocket. Varro thought he was breaking Hannibal's line. He was walking into a noose. As the center bent back, the Libyan infantry on both flanks became visible. Roman formation was so deep, so compressed, that most soldiers couldn't see anything except the backs of men in front of them. Officers saw. Too late. Hannibal gave the signal. 8,000 Libyans on the right wheeled inward 90 degrees. 8,000 on the left did the same. Now they weren't facing forward. They were facing sideways, hitting the Roman flanks. 16,000 veteran heavy infantry in Roman armor attacking men who couldn't turn to defend because they were packed too tight. Shields were useless. Swords couldn't swing. Romans at the edges died fast. The formation compressed tighter, trying to get away from the Libyan blades. Light cavalry, skirmishing style, javelins, and harassment. The Allies held longer than the citizen cavalry, but they couldn't win. They just needed to stay engaged long enough for the trap to close. Once Hasdrubal's heavy cavalry finished pursuing the broken Roman right wing, he swung his entire force across the rear of the Roman infantry and smashed into the Allied cavalry from behind. Now the Allied horse faced enemies on two sides. They broke, fled. Maybe a few hundred escaped. Most were cut down or captured. They stood upright, held in place by living bodies pressing from all directions. Some Romans fell on their own swords, rather than face slow death by crushing or stabbing. Livy recorded men burying their heads in holes they dug with their hands, suffocating themselves. Others, thighs and tendons slashed, lay on the ground, begging Carthaginians to finish them. 29 military tribunes out of 48 total, dead. 80 Romans of senatorial rank or high magistrate positions, gone. 200 knights, equestrian class, slaughtered. The entire command structure annihilated. Only Varro escaped with roughly 50 cavalry, fleeing east to the town of Venusia. 10,000 captured, not in the battle but afterward from the camps. 70 allied cavalry escaped with Varro. 300 others reached different cities scattered. Livy provides lower figures, roughly 50,000 dead, including 45,000 foot and 2,700 horse. 19,000 captured total between camps and battlefield. Modern historians debate which source is more accurate. Some accept Polybius's 70,000. Others suggest 30,000 minimum based on battlefield mechanics and cavalry pursuit capabilities. Either way, it's catastrophic. 20% of Roman fighting men between 18 and 50 died in one day. The equivalent death rate today would eliminate millions of military-age males in hours. It remains one of the deadliest single days of combat in Western military history. Carthaginian losses, minimal. Polybius lists 5,700 dead, 4,000 Gauls, 1,500 Hispanics and Africans, 200 cavalry. Livy claims 8,000 of Hannibal's bravest men. Even taking the higher estimate, Hannibal lost less than 12% of his force while inflicting 70 to 80% casualties on an army that outnumbered him nearly 2 to 1. The kill ratio approaches 10 to 1 or higher, depending on which ancient source you trust. No battle before or since has matched this level of tactical dominance. Historians call it the perfect battle, the textbook encirclement, the standard every commander tries to replicate. They committed everything to that push because that's what Roman doctrine taught. Once committed, they couldn't adapt. The formation was too deep, too rigid. Officers couldn't communicate. Soldiers couldn't see the flanks collapsing. Hannibal knew Roman command alternated daily between consuls. He waited for Varro's day, the aggressive one who would take the bait. Terrain mattered. The river prevented Romans from extending their right flank. The plain gave Carthaginian cavalry room to operate. The wind blew dust into Roman faces, reducing visibility, making coordination impossible. Hasdrubal commanded all Carthaginian heavy cavalry. He defeated the Roman right wing, pursued just enough to scatter them, then turned his entire force to help on the other wing. Discipline, strategy, purpose. Roman cavalry had no such coordination. When they broke, they just ran. No rally, no regroup. Hannibal's cavalry won both flanks, then encircled the infantry. Rome lost the battle on the wings before the center even realized they were surrounded. They fought in Roman style, tight formations, disciplined maneuvers. When they wheeled inward, they executed the turn in perfect unison. That takes training, coordination, experience. Hannibal spent years building this army. By Cannae, his troops knew exactly what to do. The Gauls and Iberians knew their center would retreat. The Libyans knew when to wheel. The cavalry knew to return after defeating their opposition. Every unit understood the plan. Formation exercises. Each ethnic group maintained its fighting style but learned to coordinate with others. The Gauls fought with fury and intimidation, charging with war cries, swinging long swords in wide arcs. The Iberians fought with discipline, short swords and shields, organized phalanx. The Libyans adapted Roman methods completely, even wearing Roman armor so they looked like legionaries from distance. This diversity was strength, not weakness. Each unit filled a tactical niche. Gauls terrified and disrupted. Iberians held ground and pushed. Libyans flanked and encircled. Numidian cavalry harassed and pursued. Balearic slingers struck from range. Hannibal orchestrated this symphony of violence with precision conductors would envy. After the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 217 BC, Hannibal's forces captured massive quantities of Roman arms and armor. 15,000 Romans died at Trasimene. That's 15,000 sets of equipment potentially available. Gladius, swords, scutum shields, bronze helmets, chainmail if officers, greaves, javelins. Polybius specifically mentions Hannibal rearming his Libyans with this captured gear. Why? Roman equipment was standardized, mass-produced to specifications, high-quality iron and bronze. The gladius was superior close combat weapon, could thrust and cut. Scutum provided better coverage than Celtic or Iberian shields. Arming Libyans with Roman gear gave them tactical advantage and psychological edge. When they wheeled inward at Cannae, Romans saw what looked like their own soldiers attacking from the flanks. Confusion, hesitation. Those seconds mattered. By the time Romans realized these were enemies, the Libyans were already inside their formation, stabbing, cutting, killing. They carried 3 slings, different lengths for different ranges. Short sling for close combat, maybe 30 meters. Medium sling for standard range, 100 meters. Long sling for maximum distance, 200 meters or more. Ammunition was stones, lead bullets, or clay balls. Lead bullets were most effective, aerodynamic, heavy, caused massive blunt trauma even through armor. Slingers could crack skulls, break bones, disable shields. Rate of fire was faster than archers. A skilled slinger could launch 10 projectiles per minute. Accuracy was incredible. Ancient sources claim they could hit specific body parts, eyes, temples, throats, from 100 meters. Exaggeration probably, but the reputation came from somewhere. At Cannae, they stood behind the infantry lines, launching bullets over friendly troops into Roman formations. 2,000 slingers firing continuously for hours means tens of thousands of projectiles, each one potentially killing or wounding. Romans had no effective counter, their shields protected from front, not overhead. The slinger barrage softened Roman formations before infantry even engaged. Light cavalry, no armor, small shields, javelins. They didn't charge like heavy cavalry, they skirmished. Rode close, threw javelins, retreated before enemy could respond. Repeat endlessly, wore down opponents through attrition. Their horses were smaller, faster, more maneuverable than European breeds. Numidians grew up on horseback, practically centaurs. No saddles, no stirrups. Those hadn't been invented yet, just pad and rider's skill. They could shoot, throw, or stab from horseback while moving at full speed. At Cannae, they faced Roman allied cavalry on the right wing. The allies outnumbered them slightly, 4,800 to 4,000. But Numidians weren't trying to win through shock charge. They harassed, disrupted, prevented the allies from supporting Roman infantry. When Hasdrubal's heavy cavalry arrived from the opposite wing after crushing Roman citizen horse, the allied cavalry was already worn down, disorganized, vulnerable. They broke immediately. The Numidians pursued, cutting down stragglers, ensuring no regrouping. Cavalry pursuit in ancient warfare was deadly. Men running can't defend themselves. Horsemen catch them easily. Stab in the back, slash at legs, trample with hooves. Roman allied cavalry lost thousands in minutes once they broke formation. Hasdrubal smashed them, pursued briefly, reformed his cavalry, rode behind Roman infantry. That's discipline. Most cavalry chase until exhausted. Hasdrubal kept his men under control, swung them around to the opposite wing. Time elapsed, maybe 90 minutes total. The infantry center engaged simultaneously with cavalry. Romans pushed forward. Gauls and Iberians retreated slowly, controlled. This phase lasted perhaps an hour and a half. Romans thought they were winning, committed deeper into the pocket. Romans couldn't respond effectively. Formation too dense. Orders couldn't propagate through packed ranks. Panic spread faster than commands. Within minutes, the flanks collapsed inward. Roman formation compressed from both sides. Then, Hasdrubal's cavalry hit the rear. Now they're surrounded. The killing began in earnest. This slaughter phase lasted 2 to 3 hours minimum. 70,000 men don't die quickly, even when surrounded. They fight, they resist, they try to break out. Small groups probably succeeded, a few hundred here and there escaping through gaps, running east toward Venusia or Canusium. Most didn't make it. Carthaginian cavalry patrolled perimeter, javelins and swords ready, cutting down anyone who broke through infantry lines. Temperatures easily 35 to 40 degrees Celsius, 95 to 105 Fahrenheit. No shade. Armor and weapons are metal. They heat up. Romans wore bronze helmets, chainmail if they could afford it, carried scutum shields reinforced with metal boss. Thirsty from marching, dehydrated from fighting. The Aufidus River was right there, but Hannibal controlled access. Romans couldn't break away to drink. Fought in full sun for hours. Heat exhaustion, heat stroke. Dehydration contributed to casualties. Men collapsed from heat as much as wounds, couldn't defend themselves. Easy kills for Carthaginians. Hannibal understood this. He positioned his army with the river behind, ensuring his troops had water access. Romans faced away from water, sun in their faces until mid-afternoon. Libeccio wind blowing dust at them constantly. Environmental warfare. Every detail calculated. Detailed tactical breakdown published August 2025, using both Polybius and Livy alongside modern terrain analysis. Now back to the story. Quintus Fabius Maximus, the cautious general who'd been sidelined earlier, took control. He implemented emergency measures, banned public mourning, too demoralizing, limited gatherings, prevented mass hysteria. Senate consulted the Sibylline books, ancient prophetic texts kept for emergencies. They sent Quintus Fabius Pictor, a senator and historian, to Delphi to consult the oracle. They even conducted human sacrifices, burying 2 Gauls and 2 Greeks alive in the Forum Boreum. Desperate times, desperate measures. Rome's network of alliances, built over 3 centuries, started crumbling. Hannibal's strategy was working. He didn't need to capture Rome. He needed to break Roman power by peeling away their allies. Cannae was supposed to trigger mass defections. It did, but not enough. His army needed rest. They just fought for hours in August heat. Men were exhausted. Wounded needed care. More importantly, Hannibal's force wasn't equipped for siege warfare, no siege engines, no battering rams. Rome was a fortified city with walls, gates, trained defenders. The march from Cannae to Rome covered over 400 kilometers through hostile territory. It would take weeks, not days. By the time Hannibal arrived, Rome would have raised fresh legions from reserves and conscripts. His army would be trapped between Rome's walls and reinforcements coming from all directions. Hannibal knew this. He was a tactician, not a miracle worker. Hannibal's supposed reply became legendary. You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but not how to use it. Some say Hannibal missed his chance. Rome was vulnerable. One more push could have ended the war. Others point out the practical impossibilities. Saguntum, a smaller fortified city, took Hannibal 8 months to conquer. Rome was 10 times the size with better defenses. His army lacked the tools and supplies for a prolonged siege. He'd already lost all his war elephants crossing the Alps and fighting earlier battles. His forces were diminishing through attrition. Every battle cost irreplaceable veterans. Carthage sent minimal reinforcements. Hannibal was operating deep in enemy territory with stretched supply lines and no naval support. Marching on Rome could have destroyed his army and ended Carthaginian resistance in Italy entirely. Use attrition. Outlast Hannibal. Rome had resources Carthage couldn't match. Population, manpower, industrial capacity. They raised new legions within weeks of Cannae. 4 legions initially, composed of freed slaves and convicts. Not ideal troops, but bodies with weapons. Over time, they improved training, reformed tactics, learned from their defeats. Rome studied Hannibal's methods and incorporated them. Better cavalry coordination, more flexible formations, emphasis on flanking maneuvers. The manipular system adapted to prevent the rigid vulnerability that doomed them at Cannae. Initially considered inferior, they proved themselves in subsequent campaigns. Rome's willingness to arm slaves showed desperation. No ancient society casually gave weapons to enslaved people. Risk of revolt was massive. But Rome needed bodies, and slaves were available. It worked. Freedmen legions fought loyally. This decision demonstrated Roman pragmatism over ideology. Survival trumped social hierarchy. Rome's industrial mobilization was unprecedented. Every city with smiths got orders for weapons and armor, production quotas, government contracts. Italy's mineral resources, iron mines in Elba, copper in Etruria, went toward war production. Swords, spears, helmets, shields. The scale was industrial. Tens of thousands of weapons needed immediately. Rome transformed its economy into a war machine. Agriculture fed armies. Trade focused on military supplies. Every aspect bent toward defeating Hannibal. That's state power, not better generals. Better systems. They demanded troops and taxes, but provided protection and path to citizenship. Switching to Carthage meant betting on Hannibal winning completely. If he lost, Rome would punish defectors mercilessly. Most cities calculated Rome had better long-term prospects. They were right. Capua was destroyed when Rome recaptured it in 211 BC. Walls torn down, leaders executed, population enslaved. Rome made examples. The Roman Senate maintained unity under pressure. No coups, no surrenders beyond initial panic. 80 senators dead at Cannae, but survivors stayed cohesive. They appointed dictators when needed, provided military resources, maintained civil order. Republican institutions functioned under stress. That's rare. Most governments collapsed during existential crises. Rome adapted constitutionally, maintained legitimacy. This institutional stability let them wage a 15-year war without domestic collapse. Time, resources, manpower, Hannibal's weaknesses, distance from Carthage, limited reinforcements. Let time work for Rome. Brilliant strategic thinking requiring patience Rome didn't naturally possess. Aggressive culture learned defensive warfare. That adaptability won. Took command in Spain at 25, conquered Carthaginian territories methodically, captured New Carthage in 209 BC through surprise assault, defeated Hasdrubal Barca repeatedly, prevented reinforcements reaching Italy, built reputation fighting Carthaginians, learned their tactics, studied Hannibal's methods, developed counters. When he invaded Africa in 204 BC, Scipio was ready, used Hannibal's tactics against Carthage, mobile warfare, cavalry superiority, alliances with Numidian kingdoms. He was Rome's answer to Hannibal. Scipio's invasion forced Carthage to recall Hannibal, ending his Italian campaign. Most civilizations would have sued for peace. Rome raised more legions. They lost massive battles at Trebia, Trasimene, Cannae. 150,000 casualties total in 2 years. They kept fighting. This wasn't bravery. This was systemic refusal to accept defeat encoded in Roman culture and institutions. The Senate rejected every peace overture Hannibal offered, even reasonable terms, even after Cannae. Rome's identity was conquest and expansion. Losing meant extinction, so they didn't lose. They endured until Hannibal's resources ran out. By then, Roman generals had learned to counter Carthaginian tactics. Hasdrubal was intercepted crossing the Alps and destroyed at the Battle of Metaurus River. His head was thrown into Hannibal's camp. Hannibal knew then the war was lost. His allies gradually abandoned him. Rome recaptured cities one by one. Scipio Africanus, son of the general Hannibal defeated at Ticinus, invaded North Africa and threatened Carthage directly. Hannibal was recalled to defend his homeland. He fought Scipio at Zama in 202 BC and lost. First major defeat of his career. The loss wasn't tactical. Hannibal's tactics at Zama were sound. Scipio used Hannibal's own methods against him. Better cavalry, better coordination, better execution. Hannibal admitted afterward that Scipio was the superior general. Maybe. Or maybe Hannibal was worn down by 15 years of campaign. Commanders study it 22 centuries later. Military academies worldwide teach Cannae as the gold standard for battlefield annihilation. Alfred von Schlieffen, German chief of staff, wrote entire treatises on Cannae. His Schlieffen plan for World War I attempted to replicate Hannibal's double envelopment on a massive scale across Western Europe. It failed. Dwight Eisenhower said every ground commander seeks the battle of annihilation and tries to duplicate Cannae. Norman Schwarzkopf credited Hannibal's Cannae as inspiration for Gulf War strategy when coalition forces enveloped Iraqi positions in '91. Cannae became a byword for perfect military execution. It was a tactical masterpiece with zero strategic impact. Rome recovered. Carthage didn't. Hannibal's brilliance on the battlefield couldn't overcome Carthage's political dysfunction and Rome's institutional resilience. War isn't just battles. It's economics, politics, logistics, alliances, resources, population, industrial capacity, will to fight. Hannibal mastered tactics. Rome mastered everything else. That's why Rome won. Archaeological evidence from Cannae is limited. The battlefield sits near modern Can della Battaglia, a village in Puglia, Italy. Parco Archeologico Can della Battaglia preserves the site. There's a single commemorative column overlooking the plain where historians believe the battle occurred. The Antiquarium de Cannes Museum holds artifacts, bronze weapon fragments, Iberian and Roman manufacture. Corinthian-style helmet similar to Carthaginian equipment, Roman spathas, a few isolated graves possibly linked to the battle, ancient roads and Roman campsites identified nearby through surveys, no mass graves discovered, no weapon caches, no definitive proof of 70,000 dead bodies. This frustrates archaeologists. Where are the remains? 50 to 70,000 men died in roughly 1 square mile. Bodies don't just vanish. Several explanations exist. Ancient sources don't describe burial procedures in detail. Livy and Polybius mentioned Carthaginians stripping armor and weapons from Roman corpses, gold rings taken from knights' fingers. Hannibal allegedly sent 3 bushels of gold rings to Carthage as proof of victory. Bodies may have been left to rot. Scavengers, weather, and decomposition over 2 millennia leave little trace. The Aufidus River flooded regularly. Floods scatter and bury remains. Soil deposition over 22 centuries can bury battlefield evidence meters deep. Modern agriculture disturbs ancient layers. Plowing, irrigation, and construction destroy archaeological contexts. Metal detectorists and looters remove artifacts illegally. Limited excavation funding means large areas remain unexplored. Battlefield archaeology is difficult. Soldiers don't die in neat piles. They scatter across terrain. Identifying battle dead from other burials requires intensive analysis. Road networks connecting battlefield to surrounding region, but actual human remains remain elusive. Future excavations may uncover mass graves or concentrated artifact deposits that confirm ancient accounts. For now, we rely on Polybius and Livy. Retraced Hannibal's route across the Alps, examined battlefields personally. Military man himself, understood tactics and logistics. His account prioritizes factual detail over dramatic flourish. He admits uncertainty where sources conflict. His casualty figure of 70,000 is higher than Livy's, but considered plausible by historians like Josan Dirk Mosig at University of Nebraska, who published analysis in MHQ in 2016 arguing Polybius's numbers align with corrected estimates of Roman cavalry strength, which were over 6,000, not the commonly cited 6,000 flat, making total Roman forces around 90,000 with 70,000 dead mathematically consistent. He reduces Roman casualties to 50,000 to minimize the shame, inflates Carthaginian cavalry numbers to justify the defeat, blames Varro exclusively, absolving the patrician Paulus. Livy admits his purpose isn't pure historical accuracy, but moral instruction. His account is beautifully written, emotionally powerful, less factually reliable, useful for understanding how Romans remembered and mythologized Cannae generations later, less useful for reconstructing what actually happened. Cross-referencing all 3 sources, plus archaeological evidence and modern military analysis, provides the clearest picture. Cannae happened. Romans fielded 80 to 90,000 troops. Hannibal had 40 to 50,000. Romans suffered 50 to 70,000 dead. Carthaginians lost 5 to 8,000. The battle lasted several hours. Double envelopment trapped and annihilated the Roman force. These facts are certain. Specific Specific details, troop movements, exact timelines, individual acts of heroism or cowardice, these remain debated, larger than previously estimated. Economic analysis tracks grain production and distribution. Cannae's capture threatened food supplies, but Rome secured alternative routes quickly. Naval blockades and coastal raids prevented Carthage from reinforcing Hannibal effectively. Psychological studies examine Roman institutional responses to trauma, banning public mourning, human sacrifice, consultation of oracles. These weren't random. They were calculated measures to maintain social cohesion under extreme stress. Romans prioritized collective stability over individual grief. Can 10,000 cavalry actually prevent all escapes? Simulations suggest ancient accounts are plausible, but require near-perfect Carthaginian coordination and complete Roman command breakdown. Both occurred. Hannibal trained his army for years. Romans assembled theirs in weeks. Experience won. Environmental factors matter. Cavalry can decide infantry battles. Training and coordination beat raw manpower. But the deeper lesson is strategic. Winning battles doesn't win wars. Hannibal won Cannae and lost the Second Punic War. Germany won battles in World War I and lost the war. Tactical brilliance without strategic vision achieves nothing. Rome understood this. They built systems that outlasted genius. Institutions that survived catastrophe. Alliances that endured defeats. Industrial capacity that replaced losses. Political will that refused surrender. Hannibal was the better general. Rome was the better state. No secret weapons. Just pure execution of a plan that required every unit to perform perfectly. The Gallic and Iberian center had to retreat slowly without breaking. The Libyans had to wheel inward at precisely the right moment. The cavalry had to win both flanks and return instead of pursuing. Any failure breaks the trap. All succeeded. That's why Cannae is legendary. Not because Hannibal won. Lots of generals win battles. Because he won perfectly, flawlessly, in a way that's never been replicated before or since. The single commemorative column stands alone overlooking fields where 70,000 died. No grand monument, no massive memorial, just a column and a small museum with a few artifacts. The battle that nearly ended Rome is barely remembered at the place it happened. Meanwhile, military academies worldwide study it constantly. Generals read Polybius's account. Tacticians debate Hannibal's formations. Simulators model the encirclement. Cannae lives in classrooms and war colleges, not at the battlefield itself. Men stepping on corpses to reach living enemies. Bodies piled so high they form obstacles. No escape. No surrender accepted. Just methodical slaughter until the screaming stops. Then, silence. Carthaginian soldiers stripping armor. Counting rings. Surveying the field. 70,000 dead in an afternoon. 2,200 years later, crops grow there. Grain probably. Same grain Rome needed. Same grain Hannibal threatened. Soil enriched by decomposed bone and blood. History buried under farmland. The greatest tactical victory ever achieved, remembered by a column nobody visits. 70,000 dead. Then they got up and kept fighting. That's what made Rome Rome. Not winning, surviving, adapting, outlasting genius with stubbornness and resources. Hannibal was the better general. Rome was the better civilization. That's why we speak Latin derivatives, not Punic. That's why Roman law and engineering shaped Western civilization, not Carthaginian. Cannae was Hannibal's masterpiece. Rome's survival was the greater achievement.